This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska.
And boom, we are back in the Hunt Nebraska cabin doing a little hangout this week. We are finally in the month of September. I appreciate you guys joining us today and taking us along for the ride or into the office or in your home, wherever you might be listening or watching us. Make sure you get a big boom on that subscribe button or thumbs up so you know when each and every one of these hangouts and other podcasts that we do at Hunt Nebraska either drops, or you can check us out online at Facebook all the time. That's kind of where we do some hangouts as well. Real quick, we've got Hunter Nikolai, our Hunter Education Coordinator, back in the cabin, this time in person instead of via Zoom.
Good to be
that
back.
You saw the last time. We've got our good friend from the National Wild Turkey Federation, Michael. I'm Hershy, just the three of us. So this is going to be kind of a quick one, but we're excited. We've already kicked off the college football season. We're all 1-0 except for the local team, I guess. We might have to edit that one out so we don't lose any listeners, but hope is on the horizon. We've got some hunting headlines. We're all excited. I've been out. Have you guys been out yet?
No, I have not.
I was out in August.
You were out chasing squirrels?
Yeah, I haven't been out. It's been too hot for me. It's too hot for me.
It has been hot. We're just now starting to see it to drop a little bit, ever so slightly, getting some reprise from the high numbers that we've seen on a daily basis. Now, did you have any success?
No. What about you? Dove or teal or both?
I have fired shots at doves. I hope to get out teal, and hopefully by the time this airs, I'll have some better reports on doves, and teal specifically. But I thought I had it. I think I told you this, Michael, but I had a spot picked out where there were doves just moving and grooving. I got out there early morning. It was the sun was well up already, and it just like the drive into this public spot. Doves popping up all over the place, right off the dirt road and the gravel there. And when I was walking up on this dead snag that kind of separated a little grassy, short grass field, and actually it was a cornfield. I mean, I'm kicking birds out of where I want to sit. I mean, the snag is covered in doves. There was even over a dozen doves just sitting on the ground right where I was setting up, and I'm just like, this is going to be fun. So I get there, and I casually take and set out. I had one of those fold-up lawn chairs. I said, all right, doves are flitting by. I'm setting out the old mojo. Oh, this is good. They're moving around trying to get back in here. Sat down, got my earplugs in, got the shotguns in the shells, opened up my my morning Mountain Dew, and then it just quit. I probably had 3 or 4 that buzzed me, and that was about it. But it just like, where'd they go? And I could see them flying in the distance, so I had a good idea exactly where they went, folks. But they did not come back to that spot.
They were not feeling it anymore.
Which is really odd for doves. Usually once you find where they want to be, you get there and settle down. And I was decently hidden, but
Make their way back pretty quick.
yeah, they do. But they must have found the better party elsewhere. There were a good number of doves around, and I know we're here that from across the state, warm weather. We didn't really have any reason for these doves to move out, so they were staging. Some places I think they might have moved. Where I was, the water condition kind of changed a little bit. We got a little bit of rain that took those sandy or muddy flats that they need to land on and to get water, and kind of put water on top of it. So it went from vegetation, so it wasn't as easy. And perhaps that July rain in some spots made vegetation grow up where it might not have otherwise, and they had plenty of food, plenty of water opportunities, so they might not have had to stay in one spot. So folks, give us a comment down below what you've been seeing out there in the dove fields, because with this warm weather, that's one nice thing. Usually our Nebraska dove season is helped by that. Because they don't have much reason to move. Also, What you've been seeing in teal, because I'd love to know that. Our season will be wrapping up here soon on the high plains and low plains. We've got another weekend or so. So get out and enjoy that. But other than that, it's good to see folks out there enjoying the resource. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about here is getting stuck. And folks, if you haven't seen this, you can find it online. Doing a little quick search, but we had an unfortunate
I've been temporarily stuck. When does it become you're stuck? I think is the question.
Well, I think any time where you're unable to move for even a short amount of time, Hunter, kind of means you're stuck. Now, there's varying degrees of if you can get out by yourself, if you can work at it, if you can
take your boot off, and I've done that level of stuff.
Well, tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, I mean,
where were you hunting?
I think it was deer, and I think we were doing deer drives and going through some swampy bottoms, and just hit an area where it's a little bit muddier or softer than you think, and that rubber boot gets sucked in and doesn't want to come back out. Happens pretty quickly.
Your plans have changed. You're not going anywhere.
So did you pull your foot out of the boot?
Yeah, pull the foot out of the boot, and then you can.
And so now you got one stocking foot in the mud and another boot on, and you're pulling on the.
I think I was able to lean on something because it was pretty thick and swampy. But yeah, I've been stuck.
You've been stuck. Now it sounds like more than once. That one jumped to the mind pretty fast.
I'd say
might be a yearly occurrence.
They're not that memorable, so there must not be that stuck.
So yeah,
I think this guy's gonna remember this one for a while.
I can't think of a time that I've ever been that stuck.
Really?
I think, usually a lot of the spots that I hunt don't really hunt a lot of swampy spots, and there's been some times walking through some mud where you'll get maybe caught for a second or two and gotta kind of yank your boot out. I've had that happen, but nothing where I go to step and I don't step and then I'm like, oh no.
See, my times getting stuck have been around waterfowl. This individual in northeast Nebraska up at Wood Duck State Wildlife Management Area, we'll talk a little bit more about that situation here soon, but he was actually dove hunting. But mine have been around ducks, usually. It's been one of those things that I've taken advantage of some flooded areas, some flooded fields, and you get that topsoil, wet just right, and you might have 2 inches of water sitting on top and a whole bunch of muck underneath. But one of the most stuck I ever got was not while I was hunting. It was actually while putting up some wood duck boxes. And generally, I have found the best time to do that is when there's ice on the pond. You drill a hole through the ice, then you're able to stand right there, so you're able to get above it already, pound in the old sign post or T-post, whatever you're going to be using pipe to get it down and attach the wood duck box. But in this particular incident, I didn't. I had the chest waders on. I went into it was at a state park where we had about 110-acre lake there, but also had a little catch basin on top with a creek that flowed into the bigger lake, and it was a great spot for wood ducks, and kind of pooled some water up to help some of the sediments fall out. Well, I was up there in chest waders, open water, had my pipe at that time, had the wood duck box up on the shore as well, and I went out there and I got just over knee deep is what it was. And I grabbed, and folks, if you're old enough and listening to this, you'll know what I'm talking about. The old post driver, the one that kind of fits like a tube right over top of that hole. And I'm pounding that down, and it's going down real nice into the mucky bottom that I was in. And I go to take that off, and I was like, all right, now all of a sudden you got to stretch it up over top, and you got to, for a short guy like me, that's a challenge. And it should have been my first clue that slamming that post driver into the muck on that pole. It wasn't just driving the pole into the mud, because I couldn't stretch that far. I just about got it over and just like, I'm not moving. I'm not moving. And I started looking around. I'm kind of not in the most remote of spots, but I had to walk a little ways from where I parked the company truck, if you will. And it dawned on me two things. Just like, one, back then this was before cell phones. How am I going to get a hold of anybody? And two, I realized it's Friday afternoon. There's a good chance that a lot of the other staff is probably getting ready, getting cleaned up for the weekend.
You went home for the night already.
Went home early.
I really didn't tell anyone that I was going to go finish this project up, but I did. And I'm sitting there trying to think of my options. And once you're stuck up to your waist in muck, You do kind of start rocking back and forth. I don't know if it's just reflex or what, trying to get some extra space in there and move. And folks, from about, I know from the knee down, there wasn't any movement. From the knee up, there might have been a slight, measured in centimeters movement. And of course, my hands and stuff are going back and forth up above the water, trying to get some momentum going back and forth.
Starting to panic at this point a little bit, or
I figured I could take it. Monday I'd miss the morning meeting that we always had as a staff there, and probably get yelled at for it, and they'd come looking for me and find the truck parked there some spot. But it was also one of those areas that I was probably just far enough away from the campground and some major trails that if I would have shouted at the right time, it probably someone might have heard me, but also just far enough to make you start thinking about it.
So I take it you weren't married at this point because you didn't say your wife was going to miss you.
That's a good question. I do believe I was married at this point, but she would at least given me till Saturday night, Sunday morning to give it my
she's got a long leash there on how long you can be gone.
It would have been one of those things, man, it's kind of quiet around here. I wonder why is it so quiet type thing.
Where is waiters? Why aren't they hanging on the hook?
I was going to use those waiters today.
But I will say that finally was able to kind of shake back and forth and got some air underneath. And like you said, you had to make that sacrifice, just like you were talking about. When you get your boot stuck in the mud, there's some times where you're going to make a hard decision of getting out of that situation. And I did. I filled the waders and got one leg kind of moving and got an air bubble down there and was able to work my way free. But it's just like, I don't think that wood duck box got set. I know it didn't get set that night. It might not have got set in that year until the ice came in. I finished it, and we got all sorts of questions. Why is there just a pole with nothing on it sitting out there above the lake? So it's like, it's a long story. But that's just one time of getting stuck out there. And what this gentleman was doing is he was hunting over the holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, out at one of our state wildlife management areas, dove hunting in a pond that looked like it, and looking at the pictures, folks, it does look dry. And he was probably hunting right along the edge. Might have either been cutting across or maybe dropped a dove because they love those mud flats, especially if there's little puddles here and there. But it was not completely dry out. It was mud. And in this story from 1011, like I said, they've got quicksand mentioned here. But this area is about 6 miles southwest of Stanton, Nebraska. According to the sheriff's office, it took first responders nearly 30 minutes to locate the hunter using sirens and yelling. When they did find the 25-year-old hunter, authorities say he was in a pond that appeared to have dried out but was actually saturated mud. They say the hunter had sunken to the point where the mud was above his waist. The first responders were able to get the hunter out by using rescue ropes. He was treated for dehydration. Otherwise, he was doing fine. And for this unlucky fellow, luckily he had his cell phone on him, which is something that in Hunter Ed we kind of talk about nowadays, keeping your cell phone on you.
Yeah. Good asset.
Usually I like to keep mine if I'm wearing like bibs or something. I keep it in a top pocket, so it's a lot easier to get to. And in that case, especially if he had it, like down on his hips in a regular pocket, he wouldn't have been able to get to it at that point.
No, that's
been
good point.
Covered in mud like his gun was, or he couldn't use it. But I mean, typically we teach that for tree stand. I mean, and getting lost. But
yes, we do.
If you've got it in the upper half of your body, if you fall and are in your harness from a tree stand, you can access that with it being able to accessible. So it's always a good thought. Especially if you're in self-service and understand that.
It's one of those things that
there's going to be service, but
has definitely become part of our lives. Obviously, some folks might be listening on their cell phone right now, but at the same point, it can really help you get out of a sticky situation. That's what he did. He used the phone to call 911, and then they were able to ping his approximate location, so they had an idea of where he was. They just had to zero in on it back and forth. But like you said, his gun actually got bogged down. I mean, it must have gotten stuck with mud. I don't know if that was in the fall, him trying to use it for leverage, whatever. But I definitely give kudos to the hunter that got stuck for keeping his wits about him and his mind about him, using that cell phone, because he mentioned he didn't feel safe firing that gun to alert the authorities exactly where he was because it was plugged, because that's dangerous.
Yeah, you don't want to shoot a gun when it's got mud jammed in the barrel or in the.
It's a good way to blow it up.
Yeah.
Now,
he did about everything right for the situation he got in. So.
Amen to that, and good thing that he did. Like I said, just a little dehydrated. They were able to help him with that, and then he didn't need to go any further. He declined transportation to a hospital or other care facility. But unfortunately for him, it is the day of the age of the camera, and all cameras have video buttons and pictures. So there are pictures of this individual, unfortunately, being stuck in the mud and some of the rescue efforts that were going on, which he might be. In fact, one of the more famous ones is he is above his waist, not too far from where dry ground, solid ground was, but you can catch that just about anywhere online. So unfortunately, he's probably going to not, he's going to have a story to tell for a while. And unfortunately, his buddies are probably going to have some pictures or video of this for some time. Now, I will say, in his defense, folks, according to this article from, again, 1011 here in Lincoln, this is at least the third time that a hunter has gotten stuck or bogged down in heavy mud in the wood duck area in the past 7 years, said the Stanton County Sheriff's Office in a press release.
I think maybe we need some signs out there. Beware of mud flats.
Oh, my goodness. So I pulled up, I looked this up, and this I found from the Lincoln Journal-Star newspaper here in town. You can find it online as well. Click some of these pop-ups that have shown up here on my screen. But hunter stuck in marsh. Finally, the cavalry arrived. This is from October 12th, 2016, and it outlines the story of a gentleman who was out doing a little bit of duck hunting out there at the Wood Duck Wildlife Management Area in the northeast part of the state. And he'd been hunting this area before. He kind of knew how to keep from getting stuck until he had to wait for some debris to float by or something along those lines. He stopped, got stuck, was there for about the same length of time. Fortunate for him, one of our conservation officers at the time knew he was out there, was actually going to meet him back at the parking lot to check his hunt permit, because the hunter was out in the water, either adjusting decoys, picking up, maybe picking up a bird. It does not say. But when he didn't show up to the parking lot, he went out looking for him, was able to see him, and he, again, was sunk pretty deep into his waders, couldn't move, had a dog that kind of helped him move a little bit there for a while at the end, but they needed some extra help as well. So, folks, if you're in the northeast part of the state and you come across a place called the Wood Duck State Wildlife Management Area, keep in mind that what looks dry might be saturated, and it's known for getting folks stuck.
Those dried up mud flats, they get kind of crusty on top, and that makes you think, it's safe to walk across. I've seen a few of those, and you take one step into them, and no, they are not.
Yeah, a good idea to have grab a tree limb or something and use it to prod and poke if you can. But I'm pulling this. I've never been to the Wood Duck WMA, but I'm looking at it here in the public access atlas, in person and online, and it's a 1,800 acre WMA, so it's no small WMA to get stuck in either.
And, it looks like it's got quite a bit of water on it too. There's a lot of different little. Just looking at the access here, there's some. Looks like a bigger lake and some definitely some streams and ponds on there that. It looks like quite a bit of it's water.
And let's face it, we go to these areas, hunting, fishing, camping, whatever, usually kind of get away from civilization and our day-to-day. They're not known for their cell service. They're not known for connectivity. In fact, that's the reason a lot of us, like I said, go to these spots. So it's good to know, again, hunter education. We talk about it. Plan your hunt your plan.
Tell somebody where you're going. Tell them when you're going to be back.
Yeah,
bring a means of communicating if you do have service, and that's if you don't, then somebody knows if you don't show up by that time. We know where to go looking for you.
Exactly, and if you're pounding in wood duck boxes in the open water, I'd suggest the same thing.
Tell your colleagues.
Just because. Exactly. I doubt any of these individuals ever thought, today I might get stuck out there. It's just not part of the plan. Anyone that's fallen out of a tree stand never thought it would happen to me. All that stuff happens. So do plan your hunt and hunt your plan. Now, have you guys ever been stuck then in a vehicle? If you haven't been stuck walking that often, because I'm not going to tell any more stories on myself about getting stuck pheasant hunting or goose hunting or any of that.
I have gotten stuck about halfway up to my door in mud before. I had my first car was a 1995 Jeep Cherokee Sport, and so little box body Jeep, 4-wheel drive, obviously, and I was coming home from my grandparents' farm one day, and there's a back road from the farm that you can take that goes all the way out to the edge of town, and basically it's just a straight shot along that back road, and then like take a right turn up, and then it goes right up to the neighborhood where I live. So I didn't have to take the highway or anything. And I like taking that every once in a while, just taking the scenic route. Well, on this particular day, it had rained fairly heavily a couple days before, and part of this gravel road, I'd say probably about a half mile to a mile of it, turns into dirt. We're just there's no houses out there. It's kind of in between townships. Nobody really maintains that stretch of road very well, and it's a pretty popular spot for kids to go out and go mudding after it rains. So I was driving through that stretch and thought I could make it through, and pretty soon I get bogged down in my Jeep, and the mud was probably about quarter to halfway up my door on my Jeep, and I had to basically floor it. And I was going in reverse and forward, so I'd basically rock it back and forth. Yeah. And eventually I got it loose enough and got the front wheels up onto a dry enough stretch of road where I kind of dig myself out. But that took a good probably 15, 20 minutes or so to kind of rock back and forth and dig myself out.
Now, that's not too bad. When you have a vehicle involved, I'm not sure if you don't need to be pulled out. It might not be officially stuck. At least I don't keep track of those very often where I was able to rock out because that'd be too long of a list.
Probably could have given up earlier and just said I was stuck, but I was not about to do that. So especially, that also comes a little bit with I'm driving a Jeep, by God, I can get out of this.
That's right.
That mentality of, well, I have a Jeep, I can go anywhere. That's so, right. Yeah, that's the mentality I went with there. Of course, being, I think I was probably 16, 17 at the time when it happened. So I definitely was not about to call my dad or whatever. It's like, hey, I'm stuck out in the middle of nowhere.
That's where a stranger driving by comes into the benefit. I've been on the receiving end of that help before, so you didn't have to call somebody else for help. Hey, you got a tow strap and want to pull me out? Yeah, I've snowmobiles, old Jeeps, I've gotten stuck in sand. But like you said, at what point are you stuck? If it's like that
I know this one.
Crap moment.
So what's the stuckest you've been then? Where you ever have to call a professional tow truck or
never? I've never had to call a tow truck. I think the most stuck, and it actually wasn't me, but I was snowmobiling with my two brothers. And we were out all day.
Don't blame it on the brothers.
In Wisconsin, yep. And we each have our own sled. We're riding, headed back towards the vehicles, but we're probably still, 5 to 10 miles away riding through the public trail system. And my little brother's sled blew up and he completely, done.
Oh no.
So we left it there. We were pretty far off any near roads. We left it off the side of the trail, and we're just going to go back to the trailer our sleds and come back and get it and tow it back to the nearest road from there, so we don't have to tow it back as far. And they're riding two up on a sled, and we're riding along a public roadway where the trail comes along the side of the road, and it's just got a real steep embankment down to some barbed wire fence.
Ooh.
And I'm riding behind them, and all of a sudden I don't know if you've ever been on a snowmobile, but if you're one of your skids catches that edge, it's gonna suck you right in. Especially if you're two up on a sled, you really gotta lean. So they got sucked right in, and then here I am. It's getting dark out now. We're on the side of a road, on an old county road, and trying to get unstuck, and it wasn't going anywhere. And thankfully, a half-ton drove by and saw us and
helped
helped us out. So it wasn't me. That's probably the most stuck I've seen something.
I did just think of one where I did legitimately, I could not get out. I was going target shooting one day back in the pasture at my grandparents' farm, and this was like, I think it was June. So, cattle pasture in June, grass is pretty tall, and there's a little ditch behind one of the ponds in the pasture that had kind of been wallowed out, but grass had grown over it, so you couldn't see that there was a ditch there. So I was driving back to the spot I was going to shoot in, and it's just right in front of me. It's just a straight shot. I'm just going to go across.
Oh no!
Womp. Right front tire falls right off into that ditch, and I was not getting out. I had to call up to the house and ask Grandma to get So Grandpa drives out with his old John Deere 720 tractor and the chain, and had to pull me out that way. So that would be the most stuck I've ever gotten. I've had to be pulled out of a ditch before.
It sounds like there's a tow truck involved in one of your getting
In mine?
stuck moment.
Well, in one of them, I've required professional help when it comes to getting stuck. I did it quite a bit. Luckily, haven't been too bad lately, but probably one of my top 2 stories involves either the day I got 2 vehicles stuck. And that one, luckily, the farmer was kind enough. My dad came looking for us. But probably the worst was when my brother and we were going from spot A to spot B, just like you were talking about, Michael. Like, all right, there's this old dirt sand road that we can use. It's kind of scenic. You might see deer. Who knows what you see. It's off the main highway, but we need to go. We're here. We want to go there. Let's take it. And we were in a Pontiac Catalina, which is it was a boat of a car. I mean, it's not made for the mud or anything. It was pretty cool. It had a 400 cubic inch engine, so it had some go to it, but it had no clearance, all rear-wheel drive, all that good
the
stuff.
The makeup of a getting stuck car.
Yeah, it was.
This does not sound right like an off-roading machine.
And it was one of those things, we're driving down the road, and it was a beautiful winter day, and we came up over the hill. And all of a sudden, I mean, it had been sand, dirt for some time, came up over this hill and realized, uh-oh. We've only got like a mile to go. There's no way we're going this mile. But we've already come up over the hill, and you can't hit the brakes fast enough because all of a sudden you start feeling yourself sliding towards the edge, just like there's only one way to go.
Fishtailing a little bit.
And my brother and I were there, and I blame him for it. Pay no attention to who was behind the steering wheel. But we made it. We made it a quarter of that mile. And before all of a sudden we just were coated, and the underside of the vehicle was coated, and we weren't in the ditch. To my credit, I kept it out of the ditch, but it was, like you said, it was buried enough it wasn't going any further.
Yeah, it wasn't going anywhere.
And folks, this is where I put my experience to use, and I knew there's no way we were getting this out with sticks and rocks and putting it under the tire or rocking it back and forth. I'm sure we tried it, but it just like, I'm only going to make it worse. Now, we were right up above a place where I grew up called South Amana. This is in eastern Iowa. And I knew that Butch's garage was right down that hill. And we had a mile and a half to walk, but it was pretty much, once we got off the mud, it was all downhill. And my parents had spent a lot of money keeping our old cars and vehicles in decent shape there at Butch's, so I figured we'd go in. He's got a tow truck. Well, Butch talks more than any person that I've met, which I know is going to shock the two of you guys quite a bit with some of the folks we work around. Perhaps not in our same office area, but it could be.
Possibly.
And, he knew where we were stuck. All we had to do was say we were stuck and all that. And so he was getting things ready, got his truck ready, and off we went. Now, we never got a word in edgewise. I mean, we just, but, and he just keep talking on something else. And he was telling about the weather and the sports and who knows what else. He just kept talking. Long story short, I learned some new words when he backed up to our car, hooked onto it, and then proceeded in the next 3 minutes to get stuck himself.
Oh, no.
Now, I learned a few more words when the second tow truck he had, a bigger tow truck, which wasn't made for mud, got stuck. And then we had to find another. He had to call in some friends that had just big old 4x4s. And it was a whole daisy change of vehicles coming out of this mud area. And that car may or may not be stuck there, because by the time he finally took a breath, I was able to say, we got no money. I learned some new words that day, folks, about and where this car was going and how it was getting there and all that type of stuff. But he found it in his heart to find out that, he didn't push it all the way back in the mud. We were able to get it out after that. But he wasn't happy, to say the least, because he just spent his two vehicles, and I don't know how, we were probably 3 hours into this whole endeavor getting it unstuck. to find out he wasn't getting paid right then and there. Luckily, he knew my dad. He didn't recognize who we were right off the bat. And to be honest with you, two things happened after that weren't good either. Well, my brother and I, we still went pheasant hunting. Butch called my dad just to apologize for the new words he taught us two kids because he figured he'd be in trouble if we told the story. Of course, what he didn't take into consideration that us two getting the car stuck and two other tow trucks and taking as much help as we did up on the mud road we were on, probably wasn't good to know that we were there. That's one of those things that Dad didn't need to know when he found out about it. But then he also found out what it was going to cost to pay for it, which wasn't good. So he wasn't in a good mood. And Michael, the next morning when he jumped into the Catalina to use it, now, again, this was in winter, and that nice, beautiful day went to a pretty cold, below freezing. I mean, down in the, teens, if not single digits overnight. None of that mud had ever gotten cleaned out underneath that car. And he jumped in it the next morning to go do something. And it was, I for some reason, my brother and I just parked it in the middle of the driveway. It was blocking all the other cars. That car didn't move for like another 2 weeks of all the mud that was up underneath it, frozen.
Yeah.
You could turn it on, but
Parking block.
nothing was going. So we didn't live that one down for some time. But it was probably the most stuck I've been officially since I had to call in help. I paid for it many times over.
You had to call in reserves on several times.
But yeah, it's just one of many times. Now, I don't know what we teach in hunter ed class when it comes to getting a vehicle stuck. Do you cover that very much? I do because I firsthand I know you need a tow strap and some extra telephone numbers with people that might have
a buddy with a winch
able to pull you out. Yeah.
I think that comes back to just like anything. If you're telling somebody where you're at and you're not going to, if you don't have a means of contacting anybody, at least they know. Well, we always say tell them the route you're going to get there and get back to, so they can take that route to come find you. So
there you go. And folks, here in the state of Nebraska, there are spots you can get stuck pretty quick, and you have to know where you are and where the soil is. And I know the true Nebraskans are nodding their head because in certain spots after a big rain, the roads get better. I mean, if you're up in the sand hills, the sand gets firmer. It's easier to get in and out. When it's dry, that powder sand can almost drift like snow. And you can find yourself sinking in sand all of a sudden because there's just nothing there to hold you. Or if you've got other spots, it gets a little rain and even just a little on some of our dirt roads. All of a sudden, your tires are coated. You can't throw it off like you and I did growing up, Michael, to get more traction. It just coats it more. And you're done. There's definitely spots to avoid. So do keep that in mind. Our heart goes out to this young hunter that got stuck up there in northeast Nebraska, but you did provide some pretty good fodder here for the Hunt Nebraska.
If he happens to be listening, we'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, well, and anyone else that's ever gotten stuck hunting or getting back and forth to those spots, it definitely makes for some good memories to say the least. Now, some of the other things that I've come across, we got some hunting headlines going on. A lot of states getting their bird numbers out, their roadside surveys, all that. You'll want to check that out. Ours are coming out. You guys point out, I don't know if we've mentioned about this on our podcast, that the new public access atlas for the 23-24 hunting season is out. Going to want to grab a hold of that. It's actually just as promised. Our good friend from the High Prairie Sportsman himself, Matt's there on the cover holding a limited teal, it looks like, by a walk-in sign as well. Some neat things in there. That's always a fun one. So make sure you get a hard copy to have with you, but also, as you mentioned, it's online. That's probably where I use the most when I first start looking for a spot.
I think I do too. I was looking at this earlier. I like and you can see it online too in the PDF version of the Access Atlas, but I like the back of the book here, the map sheet index, where you can see the specific regulations and kind of pan through that pretty quickly. I think that's a pretty neat to see your acreage, see where in the state it is, and then from there, I kind of come here sometimes too to make sure I know the rules before I'm going to a spot too, and obviously follow all the signs once you get there too. But that's one of my favorite parts of the printout version of the Access Atlas.
Well, the nice thing about the online one is it's constantly updated. If there's any changes to open fields and waters or anything like that, it's pretty quickly updated on the online atlas. So that's always a good tool to consult for up to the minute. information on public hunting ground.
That's one of those tricks to have up your sleeve. I found a few that get added after this goes to print in the middle of summer and doesn't get reprinted until the following summer, is you can find some spots that no one else really knows about.
Yep.
That's in there, which is kind of fun. I'm just looking, did you guys find wood duck in here then?
I had it pulled up. It was page.
Got to be around 128, almost the very last page. I just wonder, see if it says watch out for mud.
Watch. We might have to add it in there.
It's like I said, 1,800 acres, map 35.
Wood duck. There's no specific regulation restrictions on wood duck.
But that one's kind of interesting. Here's something. One of our youngsters that enrolled in the Mentor Youth Archery Program just hit the field it's a neat program, folks, where we pair hunter ed graduates that have not yet graduated high school and might be lacking an archery hunting mentor with actual bow hunter ed instructors, master instructors in a lot of cases, and our trained mentors. And we've got our first harvest, a big doe, one of the public areas or properties that we make use of, not far from the Lincoln area. Congratulations to Cam, great big doe that he was able to successfully harvest. But it's kind of neat seeing what's happening around the good old US of A about hunting. And one of the things popping up here along those same lines, City of Pittsburgh is seeking archers to help deal with deer population crisis in parks. They've got some areas that are definitely within city limits that are just getting hammered by the high number of white-tailed deer making use of it. They've got a program where they're trying to track down 30 bow hunters that have been through the program. They've got to do some proficiency testing, but they're trying to do some hunts in there. And I applaud any town or city or area that has a issue with a wildlife game animal that looks to hunting to help solve that. And I know our program's been benefited by that as well, because sometimes the properties within our archery program and within some of our youth hunting opportunities and new hunter opportunities are not areas where they just can open up to everybody. They've got to be very select about that, and it provides some opportunities for these new hunters to get out and be a part of. I know Wisconsin's done that from time to time. Some spots in Missouri might be doing the same thing.
They have.
Yeah, I know. Like you said, at the end of the day, hunters are used as a tool to manage wildlife, despite the traditions and all other aspects of it that we like, and that's come to be the most effective means. And I think that's comes true when all these urban areas are addressing their overpopulated deer and other species. Hunters are there to always talk about access and opportunity too. Some of these hunts that are happening, and they may be application only or limited, but they're neat opportunities sometimes.
Yes, it is. We've got some, like I said, parks here in Nebraska that do that. We've got some partner lands that do the same thing. I know the Platte River Recovery Group, I believe it is, that does that each year. It's really kind of cool because, we know it's something that anything that you have too many of can cause some damage to the habitat, to themselves, to others, and with deer, it can cause some traffic issues and personal injury issues and all that type of stuff, and worse. So it is kind of neat because there's only so many options that have been proven effective, and one of them is just reduction of that deer herd. I mean, that's at the very root of it. They do have sharpshooters that actually get paid to go harvest deer in some of these situations, and sometimes that's the only option you're able to exercise. That's expensive. I haven't looked at it in some time, but I know when it started, it came down to several $100s, if not $1,000 or $2,000 at times for every deer removed from that population. That's got to come out of somewhere. Yeah. Some of these cities can't afford that, or some of these areas can't just afford that because they're working on a tight budget anyway. But then to have people that are willing to do it, able to do it, and willing to pay for that opportunity and help support conservation and all that, I mean, that's just amazing. All right, they got to pay $30 for their permit. Some of these might have a, not an entry fee, but a registration fee to process things. And then you have several folks that are working on it, and the meat goes to a good cause. Not that it doesn't elsewhere, but sometimes, if sharpshooting deer, you're taking out anything and everything out there, and you might not be. In this case, they're antlerless only. They're going after the does, the ones that are going to add to the population more so than those antlered bucks. So it's not a trophy hunt,
right?
But in a sharpshooting situation, you take them all.
Yep.
And the cost doesn't change. It is still pretty high, but it's, like I said, sometimes the only option that's available. So hats off to them. for doing that in Pittsburgh. And if you can do it in Pittsburgh, you can do it in places like Grand Island and Kearney and Scottsbluff and Omaha and all that type of stuff. And I know Fontenelle Forest made use of archers and muzzleloaders for quite some time.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. You don't see every spring turkey season. I'll see articles pop up about places that turkeys are overrunning this town, and I never see any similar programs with folks trying to hunt turkeys with bows and that sort of environment. So food for thought there. Maybe
there
have
you go.
Similar turkey hunting programs too.
I've seen a lot of places where turkeys get aggressive during that time. And
Yep.
You're exactly right.
The urban turkey, they become a good story. So
yeah, they do.
Something else that popped up on my screen, and normally I'd ignore this one, Hunter, but this one caught my eye, and now it's just closed on me. But some folks that are getting ready to bear hunt in the state of Wisconsin, which we know somebody in this room, folks, that's going to be doing that here really soon. How many days you got left?
6 days.
Wait,
no, week. What is today? Wednesday.
Today is Wednesday.
Week from today, the season
6th
opens
of September.
For me.
Have you figured out what 42 inches looks like from 30 yards yet?
I've got a lot. I'm dreaming about it now, so I must.
I bet so. So what I found is a couple of different articles that in Wisconsin kind of run this through us. So if you didn't catch the earlier episodes, Hunter can fill you in. So I mean, this is deep woods. I mean, this is some pretty thickly wooded areas oftentimes, and these bear just it's not like they're dense. It's not like they're just quite like whitetail. You're not going to see hundreds of them in one spot or dozens of them. So the tradition's been to help bring them out and to be able to, so you're able to select and see if it's a female with cubs or something a little easier, is to use bait.
Yeah, bait or run dogs and tree them would be the two main ways that most folks hunt them. Not many, or probably, if any, folks go out there and just sit in a stand and wait, kind of like deer.
So this came out just yesterday, September 5th. I found it on Outdoor News. Wisconsin hunters find ways to deal with more wolves on bear bait sites, is the headline. And it says, anyone who thinks timber wolves only eat sick, lame, and lazy, or maybe a waddling beaver or deer here and there, may be surprised to learn wolves suffer indignation not one whit from eating stale Wonder Bread, stiff Chips Ahoy cookies, moldy Pop-Tarts, granola bars, popcorn, dry marshmallows, or just about anything a guy might stuff to a bear bait stump. And we have a couple in here, another story that talked about a gentleman who's owns the ground and been baiting for bears and living with them and around them for quite some time, saying this year he's not seeing near as many as he usually does, a couple here and there, but he says he's definitely noticed more wolves showing up. And it says here, bear hunters have known this to be true ever since the state's wolf population started building in the 1980s. Now that the state's wolf numbers easily exceed 1,300 animals, bear hunters are feeding as many wolves as they are bears. Now, as the folks you're hunting with that are there in Wisconsin right now with the cameras and stuff, are they seeing any wolves on the bear bait?
Nope, we haven't seen any wolves on camera. So I think, the one part of that is, when you're baiting bears, there's strict regulations. There's a gallon size restriction, and it also has to be inaccessible to other game animals. So black bears, wolves, deer, other game have a tough time. The bait has to be covered with, our site has heavy logs or in a tree stump that's covered by something natural that prevents other animals like wolves or deer from getting into it. So I think that's probably part of the situation there. Yeah, and that's why some of those regulations are there. So they're only accessible to bears that can remove that heavy stuff off the top and get to it.
I will say there's nothing in here that either of the articles that I read, and both of them are pretty short, none of them said anything about with the intent to hunt them or anything like that. So it might be that they don't draw every year, or they just kind of do it for the fun and see what pops up. And
yeah, well, and I mean, up there, a lot of those folks are running guide services and bringing other hunters in, and it's kind of a tight-knit group up there of folks hunting and baiting for bears. So I don't discount that there probably are. There are probably cameras of them coming in, and I think it's a matter of how do you make that inaccessible to a wolf and accessible to a bear. But nope, we haven't seen any.
Have you ever heard the howl of a wolf out in the wild?
I've never lived or been anywhere where there's wolves, or I guess never lived or hunted anywhere where there's been wolves in the wild.
I've been in those spots. I don't believe I have ever heard a wolf howl, and part of it, since I don't remember it, it couldn't have been, so I didn't fully experience it. You're going to have to let us know if you hear any wolves up there when you're.
I think it would make my spine tingle. I don't know that I'd like it.
It's definitely wolf country, but yeah, the guide that we're working through hasn't seen too many, so I don't know if that means we're doing it right and they're just not coming in, or we're not putting out bait that wolves are attracted to. But yeah, that's not.
Oh wow!
I'll let you know if we hear anything, or it'd be pretty neat to see a wolf. And
I think it would.
Yep,
be.
It'd be neat to see it from about 100 yards away and not any closer.
I'll be up in a tree stand.
There you go, up in the tree stands, even better. I would not be taking my chances one bit. I've seen some of those videos on YouTube where guys get surrounded by a pack of wolves when they're hunting or something, and just I don't think I'd like that. It would not be a fun situation to be in. Now coyotes are just annoying. I can deal with coyotes. That's fine. Wolves, completely different situation there.
So, the one thing that I've had actual hunters turn around and start walking the other way when we've been moving around at night. Usually it's been turkey season, because it seems like then I'm out in spots where more than just turkeys can be. Waterfowl hunting, you're often near water or something like that. In the middle of a cornfield, there might be a coyote, but most likely you're making enough noise, you're not seeing them, you're not hearing them. But when you're out there in the timber in the dark, and if you've got to be in some spots like I have, where I've got a long hike in onto public ground or something like that, and you're there in the dark and you're covering a lot of ground and it's pretty quiet, and it's usually one person, maybe two people, as opposed to 3 or 4 duck hunting. The two things that have really made you stop and kind of check things, and in one case, my turkey hunting buddy just turned right around and was talking to me as he walked away from me. What was that? Great blue herons in the rookery. And if you've ever seen a great blue heron nesting colony, that's what it is, a rookery. They're a very solitary bird until that point, and then all of a sudden they nest together, and they sound like dinosaurs. They make all sorts of noises, and if you don't know what they are, it's just like he could have sworn they were dinosaurs. He said, "That's all I knew. Jurassic Park," and I'm out of here.
Jurassic Park is real.
But the other one was turkey hunt as well, is the scream of a bobcat.
Oh, yeah.
If you've ever heard that does sound like somebody screaming.
I've heard it at the zoo before, but
I've never heard it turkey, but I've watched a couple YouTube videos of it, a bobcat scream, and I can imagine hearing that in the woods at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark out. It would probably make your hair on the back of your neck stand up.
In fact, it was a good friend who grew up in Missouri said, I had never heard that, but I was out walking turkey hunting. This is his story. But he said, I was walking out and I heard a god-awful scream. And he said, I don't remember anything after that other than when I woke up, I was sitting in the truck again. He said, I was walking along and all of a sudden I'm sitting in the truck again. He said that made me turn. I went home. Waited till
I don't know that I'd blame
But anyway, well, folks, we've kind of got to put a fork in this. If you've got a good getting stuck story or have some questions, comments about anything we talked about, make sure you put it below. Again, give us a subscribe, a thumbs up, let us know what you're thinking, and that way you also know when the next one of these drops. But until next time.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.